Really quick post. Alrighty, I'm gonna really quick post the link. These are just notes that I have, and I've updated the notes to Uncle, um, just so y'all have access to it whenever you want. If you end up talking to someone who has similar beliefs, or if you just want to look back, I just posted those notes. And if for whatever reason it's not working, just let me know. I can fix it for you afterwards. There is a lot to go over. I will start off with I am not an expert on Buddhism, but just looking over the books that Shiva Uncle gave me and just doing some research. So this is just stuff that I have come researched and found to come to understand. And a lot of these notes are coming from a book written actually by Ravi Zacharias called The Lotus um, and the Cross. So it's like a conversation between Buddha and Jesus. So what we're going to do is I'm going to share my screen so y'all are actually able to see some of the notes on the screen. I will adjust it if need be. Um, Now, when I am showing the screen, I'm not going to be able, if anyone has any questions or want to make an input or comment, I won't be able to see you on my screen. So at any point, please unmute or Shavonko unmute and just tell me if someone has a question or a comment to make. So once again, thank you, Shibu Uncle, for having me. It's a real honor. And let's start off with an overview of, I guess, the vocabulary within Buddhism. So the ultimate central question that Buddhists have, or anybody, mankind has, is looking at the ultimate solution for human suffering. So, dukkha, I may not be pronouncing all of these words correctly, is human suffering or satisfaction. We're going to see that when we're learning about this particular religion. They also have a concept of karma. So that is just a cause and effect actions that we make in this life has a consequence, and then we'll have to deal with those consequences in the next life. Samsara is the cycle of rebirth. So once we die, if we haven't dealt with all of our past sufferings or sins or the actions that we have committed or done, if we haven't dealt with all of that, we will be reborn and we'll have to deal with it in the upcoming life. A lot of these terms are very similar to Hinduism because Buddha did start off with Hinduistic practices. So that's why Buddha did not try to make a brand new religion. He was actually just trying to do a branch of Hinduism. So that's why a lot of the terms are very similar, but they're not exactly the same in meaning. So we will cover that as well. Nirvana is that. Like a meditation practice where you hit enlightenment. That is what everyone is trying to achieve. Anatta is the idea that there is no soul or no permanent self, idea of self. So I do not have a soul. Instead, the next word is stream of consciousness. And we will discuss that a little bit more coming up. And obviously, we should be familiar with the terms of grace and sin. So these are just some of the vocabulary words I want you to keep in the back of your mind. And we're now going to cover really quickly the history of Buddha. So Buddha was actually born as a person named Siddhartha Gautama in the 6th century BC. So he was actually born in Nepal, what we considered Nepal now, and he was actually a prince or comes from a very wealthy family. So around the time that he was born, there were many signs that came about, and there was a particular sage, or how we would define a prophet, who would come and actually predicted that Gautama would be a strong ruler or a great spiritual leader. So, since his father, history's not history, but stories say that he was a king, he wanted his son to be a great ruler. So, what he did, he sheltered his son so that he would not have to endure or even see any suffering. So, this is very interesting that the foundational ideas of Buddhism actually comes from his father sheltering him from all sorts of suffering. Now, around the age of 29, Gautama left the palace that he was sheltered in, and he encountered something called four sights. He first saw an old man, and then he saw a sick person, and then he saw a dead body, and then he saw a wandering holy man. Now, the reason why these sites are so prominent to Gautama is because, remember, he was sheltered. He did not really have to face the reality of aging or being sick or coming across a dead body. So when he's seeing all of these four different sites, he's realizing what suffering can be seen as. Suffering can be seen as someone getting older and weaker. Suffering also includes getting ill and suffering from some sort of illness. Same thing with death. And then the last one he saw was a wandering holy man or an ascetic, which is a person who deprives their body and really disciplines themselves in a physical sense. So they could be reducing their food intake and various different things to reach some sort of holiness. So Buddha actually starts following in that mindset. So there's this process where Gautama leaves his family, his wife, his son, his royal life, and he starts following in this ascetic type of lifestyle. So he rejects all of his luxury and focuses on starvation, depriving himself from all the physical things of this world, luxuries, including food. He would discipline himself that way too. And he realized this was not helping him go above the nature of suffering. He was still suffering even in this. So he decided to start going through this process called the middle way or living a more balanced life. Not totally attached to luxury, not totally attached to the super discipline, depriving yourself type of nature. Okay. So from there, around the age of 35, he's meditating under a tree and he attains enlightenment. So this enlightenment becomes later known as nirvana and he becomes known as the Buddha. So the Buddha just simply means the awakened one. There is not just one Buddha, there's multiple Buddhas. Really, technically, in the religion, anyone could be a Buddha if they reach nirvana. So, his main teachings that or doctrines that he started teaching is the Four Noble Truths, the Noble Eightfold Path, karma, rebirth, and the goal of nirvana. Okay. I know I'm going very quickly and there's a lot of information at once. I'm just trying to cover a large area. So some of the things that after his death, we say, not we, but the Buddhists say that he escaped that cycle, that rebirth cycle of samsara since he hit nirvana. And that is the goal that everybody that practices in this religion is trying to attain. Now, that's the overall history. There are three major branches of Buddhism. I'm not going to go too much into it. And again, I apologize for my pronunciation. Theravada Buddhism, which is very similar to what Buddha taught. And this is also the oldest branch within Buddhism. We see this in places like Sri Lanka, Thailand, and they focus mainly on Buddha's teaching in the Pali Canon. So this is like their version of their holy scriptures, and their focus is on enlightenment through meditation, ethical living, and following the Noble Eightfold Path. We're going to focus a little bit more on this branch. You also have the Mahayana Buddhism. So, this is the current largest branch of Buddhism today. We see this practiced in China, Japan, Korea, Vietnam, and Taiwan. And they place a greater emphasis on compassion and helping others attain enlightenment. Okay, this is where the idea of Buddhavistas, people who postpone their own nirvana to help other people attain nirvana. And then the last one is tied to the Dalai Lama. So this is the Vajrayana Buddhism. So this is mainly practiced in Tibet, Bhutan, Mongolia. And they're focusing on more rituals, mantras, visualization, and different types of practices tied with that. And the Dalai Lama is actually within that particular branch. Sorry, that was also available here for y'all. Um, we're gonna go into the Four Noble Truths. Does anyone want to stay in these three branches or have any questions so far about the history of Buddha? Again, I can't see anyone.
It's
Oh, hi,
good,
that's
good.
okay. Perfect. So we're gonna go straight into one of the major doctrines. Are y'all able to see the whole entire Google sheet?
Not entirely.
Yeah.
Not entirely.
Yeah.
Is that better?
Become
Okay.
better. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. It's still clear for you, right?
Yes, it's clear.
Okay. Perfect. Sorry, I have multiple notes on my screen. Okay, so the Four Noble Truths is one of the main doctrines. The first one, and it all centers around this idea that life is suffering or dukkha. One of the first words we looked at our vocabulary. So the first noble truth is the truth of suffering. The next is the truth of the cause of suffering. So, what is the main cause for all suffering that all mankind has to deal with? The third is what is the end to the suffering? And then the fourth is the truth of the path. Now, the very first truth or suffering, if we're defining it, is that it's suffering is inevitable. So no matter what happens in our life, we're going to have to face sickness, loss, and death. Even in the luxury or the pleasurable experiences, they can also lead to different types of suffering. Now, suffering can include sickness, aging. That goes back to the first four sites where he saw the old man and the sick man. Also, death, disappointment, anxieties and worries of this world, losing a loved one, and never being satisfied is all forms of suffering within the teachings of Buddha. So, one of the examples that I give is a person who gets their dream job, but they're always anxious of being let go, of being fired. So, that is a type of suffering. So, the key takeaway here is no matter what is happening in a person's life, suffering is a universal part of our human existence. Now, the root cause of suffering is existing because of cravings that we have, any sort of desires or attachments. This could be to a possession, it could be relationships, it can be your reputation, where you are in society, your success level, how high up you go in your job, or just your life in general, are all forms of different cravings. Okay, like a person who is very wealthy and then loses all their wealth because they held on to that desire, they had to deal with suffering. Now, the only way to end all of this, all of these types of sufferings, is to reach enlightenment and the freedom called nirvana. Okay. And this process, this is why we see some individuals letting go of unhealthy relationships, or they're focusing on inner peace by releasing or letting go of pleasures of this world, luxuries, or anything else that can cause any anxiety. And one of the major ways to attain enlightenment is through the Noble Eightfold Path. So, this is the way that all people that consider themselves Buddhists must discipline their life, because they must live a life of wisdom, ethical conduct, and mental discipline. So once they continue in that, they can reach enlightenment. So, do I have any questions so far before we dive in a little bit more into the Eightfold Path?
Yes, Cheryl. One question. So, do they consider evil as any of the causes for the suffering, or is it just purely desire? How do they look at when you say about suffering? Do they identify it to be good or evil? That's
They don't even look at sin, if that answers your question. Sin is not even a topic or even a condition in this particular situation. So I know for Christians, we look at good and evil, sin, and redemption. We look; these are all common themes and practices that we have, like to overcome sin. But in Buddhism, they don't focus on things like sin. They don't focus on things that are considered necessarily, in our stance, evil and good. They're focusing more on the self. And again, Shubunkel, please correct me if I go in a different way and it's not the correct answer. I appreciate the correction. But from my understanding, Buddhism, they do not even consider sin. No one sins, if that makes sense.
sure. Thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Well,
Alrighty. Sir,
Gerald, what in your opinion made Buddha want to branch out from Hinduism? Why
he
did he want a different path like this?
He wanted to branch out of Hinduism because he did not believe some of the practices or I guess, the doctrines of Hinduism actually taught about how to escape the suffering. So he was trying to stay within Hinduism, but I believe it was his followers after he had passed away or later on in his life that, in a sense, formed a new religion. So I don't think that was necessarily under his control. His whole goal was to teach people how to reach enlightenment, if that answers your question.
Yeah, no, thank you. I just wanted that, when you mentioned, I don't know anything about Buddhism, but when you mentioned this different, those terms, karma, nirvana,
Hmm.
they all so related to Hinduism, right? So that was
Yes.
why my question was, why did he want like it's almost similar. So why was the need? So yeah,
Yes.
yes. Thank you.
Yes, this is where we see like the overlap between the two religions. But his focus was more on enlightenment and ending suffering. So that was a very good question. Thank you so much. So we're now going to look at the Eightfold Path, and I know this is not clear for y'all. I will scroll a little bit for y'all. Let me see if I can at least get this. Yes. Okay. So if you can look on the screen, the Eightfold Path is in this second column right there. But on the first column, I have grouped the Eightfold Path. So the very first two of the path is called right view and right intention. This follows under their idea of what wisdom is. So the right view, as you can see, all of the Eightfold Path has the same word in front of them, right. So they have some sort of standard. So right view means that the Four Noble Truths is true. That's what it simply means. And recognizing that all possessions cannot provide everlasting happiness. So it's not about materials, it's not about relationships, it's not about the physical. You have to follow these ethical, wise disciplines in order to have the right view. The next one is the right intention. So you must live a life of compassion, of kindness. You should not be violent or selfish. You should not hate anyone or anything. Okay, so practical example is choosing forgiveness. So these two, the first two of the Eightfold Path is tied with wisdom. The next three is tied with ethical conduct. So right speech, every word that comes out of their mouth has to be truthful and kind. You cannot gossip, you cannot lie, you cannot say anything profane. You have to be encouraging. The next is right action. You must live ethically. You cannot harm anyone. You cannot steal, or there cannot be any sexual misconduct. Your focus, ethically standing, should be to help others and respect all forms of life, not just humans. Next is right livelihood. Even your work. Whatever career path you want to go on, you cannot harm people in. Okay? Not just people, also any other living creature. And your livelihood, your career must be considered morally ethical as well. So you cannot go into careers that has any form of violence, or violence that can show up in your career. So all of that is tied with ethical conduct. The last three is tied with mental discipline. So the right effort. So your thoughts also have to be considered right or good in the standards of a Buddhist. So you can't even allow a bad thought take root in your mind. Replace any sort of grumbling with something that you're thankful for. That's a practical example that they have. The next one is right mindfulness. So being aware, not just not allowing bad thoughts to take root, but being aware of your thoughts, your emotions in that present moment. So if you're in a situation and you are fully aware that your emotions might lead you to anger, fix it. Observe your emotions and don't react in an impulsive manner. So change either your surroundings or your viewpoint, whatever the case may be. And then lastly is tied with meditation, the right concentration. So meditation is a practice that Buddhists hold on to very deeply because this opens up wisdom and enlightenment. So they have to have a calm mind so they can focus on meditating. Do I have any questions about the Eightfold Path?
Yes, one question. Yeah, sorry, I don't mean to, yeah, just trying to get everybody understand this thing better. Okay, so when they say there is something right, they are assuming something to be right, then they are assuming there is something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Now, on what basis do they differentiate between what is right living, right speech, and wrong living and wrong speech? And what if I choose to do the wrong? What are the consequences of me choosing to do the opposite of what the Eightfold Path says?
Good question. So, yes, when we see the word right, there automatically means that there is some sort of standard. I don't know if y'all have had an ethical class yet, Christian ethics, but from what I can understand, when it comes to Buddhism, it's focused more on the whole of a group of people or society. So, even if it hurts someone, don't do it. The focus is on making sure everyone, you're not harming anybody. So it seems like it depends on society. So the unfortunate thing with that is society changes. The social aspect of what is good or wrong, right or wrong, good or evil, changes over time, over cultures, over societies, over communities. That is, as from a Christian standpoint, is very dangerous. But the standard of something good needs to come from a higher being. Now, when it comes from my understanding of Buddhism, it looks like as if they're looking at society as a whole and if it benefits the majority of mankind. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you, Cheryl. That really helps. So it's basically the society that is defining what is right and wrong. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, Auntie, we can hear clearly. Are you still facing the same issue? Okay, no problem.
Alrighty. So the overall goal with these eightfold paths and the four noble truths is to gradually extinguish all desires, all cravings. So when we extinguish that, when we blow that out, then we will overcome suffering and attain enlightenment. Now, it was brought up, there are similar terms
Well,
with Hinduism, such as karma. So we'll look at that.
Cheryl,
Yes.
Sorry. Yeah, Nino has a question.
Oh, sorry, go
Yeah,
ahead.
sorry, I just had a small question. So, not related, exactly related to this, but in related to Buddhism. So is Buddhism in Japan and China all like, is it from the same root, or is it like, is there any difference? And if so, like the Buddha that they worship, I believe in Japan they worship him as a deity, not as a human, I believe, not as a following. So I just wanted to understand. So yeah, so is there a major difference between all the three, basically?
I think there's a difference in practices.
Yeah. Okay.
So, yes, they all will say they are rooted from the teachings of Buddha. They can make that argument. Now, when you look at, say, the type of the branch that Japan practices when it comes to hitting enlightenment and seeing Buddha as a god. I will say from the very beginning, in the original root of the religion, Buddha never desired or even focused on becoming God. That came on many years later.
Okay.
So that concept that is there was not in the original practices of worshiping Buddha. Now there are rituals and mantras and prayers. And to be honest, when you talk to a Buddhist, they will all have a different definition of their beliefs. So I can't even tell you if there is affirm one way to be a Buddhist. Everyone interprets, even within the religion, in their own way. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, yeah, it does. Thank you.
Perfect. So we're gonna look at karma next. Let me see. That is not on this one. I'll go back to our definitions page when it comes to karma. Does anyone want to share what they understand of karma? It doesn't have to be tied with Buddhism. It could be something that you know from Hinduism or what you've heard. Would anybody like to share that with me? You can unmute.
I think in Hinduism they say for whatever you do, you get the consequence of that in the same way. If you do good things, you'll get good things from everyone. If you do bad things, you'll get bad things from
Yes, I've heard that as well. And correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like everybody in this meeting knows a little bit more about Hinduism more than me, but based off of your actions, whether you did good or bad in your current lifetime, when you're reborn, it will determine what you are reborn into, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. So the thing is with Hinduism, from my understanding, you still have the concept of being reborn based off of your consequence or your actions into another being or into another soul, whatever the case may be, and you have to continue that process. When it comes to Buddhism, it's a little bit different. It's more with the mindset of something that's called the stream of consciousness. So with karma, karma literally just means action. So every action has a consequence. That's where Buddhism and Hinduism are very similar. So when good actions produce good consequences, bad actions can produce suffering. Okay, that's where dukkha comes back in. So your present life reflects your previous karma. Your future life represents today's actions. So, whatever we are dealing with right now in the life that we have right now is because of our past lives. Okay. With the future life, it's depending on what we do or our actions today. Okay. So this thought or this idea of rebirth can be very confusing because Buddhism does not teach an immortal soul. It doesn't talk about the soul. It talks about anatta. It talks about that there's no permanent self or no soul. So then the idea is, how does one get rebirth then if there's not a soul to continue on? This is where the stream of consciousness comes into play. So it's not that you're being reborn into another animal or another creature or another person. It's the consciousness that gets continued. So stay with me. This can be a little confusing. So I'm going to give an example. Think about when we light birthday candles. Usually or any type of candle. We might have a match and we light the match and we light the candle, but then the match quickly burns away. And we blow that off because we don't want to burn our finger. So then we can take that candle that we just lit and we can use it to light the next candle. Okay. So when we do that, the first candle with the flame lit the second one with that flame. But the second candle does not have the same flame as the first one. It came from the first flame, but it is completely separate. So, in the same manner, one life conditions another life through karma, but it is not the same soul. Like how one candle lights the next, but it's not the same flame. So the next person is not completely different or completely same. They're just continuing without a soul. Hopefully that makes some sense. I know it can be very confusing.
So does it mean there is no like how we understand there is a body, there is a mind and a spirit. So they in Buddhism they don't have a spirit. Is it like that? That they don't have a spirit, but it is the mind that keeps moving,
It is
like
the
one
mind
mind
consciousness that keeps getting
keeps moving.
reborn. Yes.
So there is no spirit. Yeah,
There's no soul. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So, with this stream of consciousness, this is what's getting reborn or going through the process of samsara. So, this is an endless cycle where you have birth, death, rebirth for thousands or millions of lives. Okay. And the overall goal is to escape this cycle, break the stream of consciousness. So, you don't have to deal with suffering anymore. With Buddhism, the overall goal is to end all suffering. So, this is where nirvana comes in. Nirvana literally means, this is why they use the example of the candle. Nirvana means to blow out. So, once you blow out or hit nirvana, enlightenment, you are extinguishing the candle. Now, with nirvana, with Buddhism, there's not necessarily, at least in the main root of the religion, there's not a heaven. There is not this paradise type of land. There is no meeting God because they're more of a non-theistic religion. We know that theistic religions, there is a God and that we interact and have a relationship with the God. Atheistic is the denial of there being a supreme being or God. Non-theistic is a little bit different. The Buddhists do not deny or claim that there are gods. That's not their focus. Their overall focus is to overcome suffering. So with nirvana, there is no heaven, there is no meeting God, there's not any form of relationship. Rather, nirvana or enlightenment is blowing out of the cravings, the sufferings, and the samsara, the rebirthing process. So technically, when someone hits nirvana, that's it. When they're dead, that's it. There's no more stream of consciousness being reborn or no more cycles. It's just their life completely ends. There is no afterlife.
So how do they answer the questions about this universe and Earth and all of these things? How the formation of the universe and the Earth? Do they follow the evolution model or?
That's a good question. Um, from my understanding, they could follow that. Once again, a lot of people will hold on within this religion, will take their own personal ideas. Um, it would make logically, it would make more sense to believe in evolution and over time things changing, tied with samsara for them. I'm sure other people in this religion have other ideas, but when it comes to a creator, they're not recognizing or focusing on the creator. They're not focusing or recognizing the creation as much. Their focus is more on overcoming the suffering and ending the suffering.
Thank you.
Okay. The next section is now looking at, hopefully I don't run out of time, comparing Jesus and Buddha. So this comes from The Lotus and the Cross, the book I was telling y'all about. Now, we have to understand that Jesus also agrees that suffering exists. But the difference with Jesus, Christianity, is the cause of the suffering. As Christians, we don't say that suffering is because of our desires or cravings. Instead, it's because of sin and that separation between mankind and God, that broken relationship that happened in the Garden of Eden and throughout time. Okay? That is the deepest problem. Is our relationship broken with God? That's what causes suffering. Now, the view with Buddha is that there is no, oh, so that's the overall I just covered. You can, again, the notes I have provided for y'all. I know this is a big document, so it's hard to cover every single point. I'm just roughly going quickly through it. So if at any point you wanted to stay a little bit longer on a particular part, please let me know. But we just covered suffering. There's the difference between the cause of the suffering. With Buddha, it's the desire and the attachments and the need to follow the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path. But with Jesus, we're looking that suffering, the real reason for it is because of a broken relationship, and that God redeems the suffering through a relationship with Him, acknowledging that Jesus died on the cross for us, fixing and redeeming that relationship between us and God. The next biggest difference is the view of self. So for Buddha, in the conversation that Buddha is having with Jesus in this book, is that there is no permanent self, there is no soul. That's Buddha's stance. It's all an illusion, it's anatta. So, in order to be liberated, Buddha says that we have to be detached from not only just ourselves, but also from others. We cannot take a hold of either and crave or desire even relationships. Now, with Jesus, Jesus says that every individual person has value because we are created in the image of God. This is why love, even going through grief, relationships, justice, all has a purpose and matter because every person has value. Um, Another big difference is how we get liberated. Once again, you have to have good karma. You're trying to, according to Buddhists, you have to attain enlightenment or at least reach for it. You have to be morally good. Again, what's the standard? That's the question that is an excellent question if you're talking to a Buddhist to ask when they say you have to live a morally good, ethical life. What's your standard? What defines good? What defines right? That is a great direction to lead a conversation when you're having those conversations with individuals, whether they're a Buddhist or someone else, because then you can open up the ideas of, well, if you believe that society defines what is good, we've had moments in history where society was completely wrong. So we can't define good based off the society. So that is an excellent way to open up a conversation. Now, the path for liberation for Christians is through salvation. And we know that it's not rule-based. Salvation is a gift of God given through grace, that we must have faith in Jesus Christ. The end goal is another main difference that Buddha and Jesus had a conversation about. Nirvana, that we had talked about, is the extinguishing or blowing out of all desire, of all the self, of your individuality, of all cravings. That is the end, so everything will be done when you die. But for us, the final goal is eternal life, life with God for all eternity. So we have communion with God. Um, and we just have a life that we know that we get to be in the presence of God without any worries, without any tear shedding, without any suffering. Another big difference is prayer or meditation. Now, I know when we looked at the three branches, someone brought up of sometimes Buddha is seen as a god, which is true to some Buddhists. There are rituals, there are mantras, there are incense burned, but overall, their meditation or prayer is not in the root or the beginning or the main focus of Buddhism is not supposed to be towards another being or even a supreme being. The prayer is just for one to look into oneself and find inner peace. But as Christians, our prayer is communication with God, where we talk, when we love God, when we try to listen and respond to what God has to say through His Word, through messages that we hear. So there is a transformation that happens when we have this communication regularly happening in our lives. Um, and then morality. I know Shibunko brought up what is considered right and wrong, ethical. So for Buddhists, their morality is a central view for them. Again, what is the standard? Again, this is why I'm saying this is a great question to ask when you come across a Buddhist. What is the standard of the good deeds that you practice? What is the standard? What is more something morally right or wrong? How do you determine that? And what if another person says differently? What do you do with that? Because the whole point is to reduce your karmic debt over time with samsara, with your rebirthing process. You're trying to end that stream of consciousness, so you end up having to pay from all your previous mind streams or consciousness. You're trying to repay that debt. So, how do you determine if something was considered right? Say your previous consciousness was right during the time of slavery in America, but now we know it's wrong. So now you're paying for a debt that you didn't even know was right or wrong in the previous life. So there's lots of contradictions here. But for us, morality or following all the rules we know is not enough for us to reach heaven. There is no one who is perfect. There is no one that is perfectly good except Jesus. So morality for ourselves is insufficient for us. But when we cling to Jesus Christ, who we know is morally perfect, who we know is the standard from day one of creation, when we cling to him, when we accept him, he transforms us. He transforms us to be more like him. And we go through the process of sanctification, justification, and these are all topics that you are all well aware of. That's how this is all different from the karmic debt that Buddhists are trying to pay off because we know Jesus has ultimately paid the price for us. Now, their view of God is that there is no God, okay? Or there's no need of a God. I wouldn't say there is no God. They wouldn't even say that. There is no need of a creator God. Whether there's an existence of God or not, it is not dependent on how they originate. It is not dependent on how they're going to hit nirvana. For us, we know that God created the heavens and the earth. We know that God created every single person and everything on this earth, and that truth and value all comes from Him. We all have value. Every man, woman, and child has value because they're created in the image of God. That's one of our focal points as Christians. And then this last section right here might be a little confusing, probably wondering who is Priya? So, in the book called Lotus and the Cross, there is a character besides Buddha and Jesus, and it's a person named Priya. And Priya had gone through so many different sufferings in her life. And she's coming to the terms of she's having to figure out what is the right path she has to take. And both Buddha and Jesus are providing these discussions or arguments for her to completely understand. So, according to Buddha, all her sufferings, and when you read the book, you will see the various different things that she had to go through. All of her suffering is debt, karmic debt. Okay, so the only hope she has is to detach herself from any merit that she might accumulate later on in life, and just hope for a better rebirth. That is the only hope that Buddhists have because they do not know if they're going to hit enlightenment or they have to relive a life through another consciousness. There is no hope. But Jesus offers hope. He offers hope through forgiveness, through love, through having a relationship with her so she can rest and have eternal life with him. So I also have a section for y'all to just compare and contrast Christianity even more. Y'all can look at that as we look at grace and the cross. The biggest difference between Buddhism and Christianity, one of it is the idea of grace. In Buddhism, there is no grace. Liberation, nirvana, enlightenment all comes from your own personal effort. But we know that personal effort does not get us to where we need to be. There is always something missing, and that's where Jesus steps in. Salvation comes through grace, and we cannot save ourselves. Christ did what we could not do. And that leads us to the cross. Buddhism tells humanity try harder, discipline yourself more, restrict yourself more, separate yourself more, try harder. But Jesus takes suffering, all mankind's suffering, upon himself on the cross. And that's one of the main things that people need to understand when it comes to Christianity. A lot of these other religions, basically all the other religions, focuses on man's own effort for self. But Christianity is different. Everyone else is trying to find a way to God, when in reality, God already found a way to us, and that was through Jesus Christ. So, I know it's 54. If y'all have any questions, there are steps on how to share the gospel. Sorry. With someone who is a Buddhist. I'm not going to go into it really. Y'all have access to it, and let me know if you need access if you joined a little bit later. But there are steps on how to share the gospel with someone who has this type of worldview, specifically with Buddhism, or even just similar. Lots of people, lots of celebrities as well, likes to take bits and pieces of Buddhist ideologies into their own personal life. So even if they don't claim to be a Buddhist, you can also use these steps to kind of direct them to face truth, what morality, what the standards, where morality really comes from along those lines. So I hope this lesson has been good and helpful to everyone. And thank you all for this opportunity.
Sure, Cheryl. And so just adding to that, can you just share that slide once again?
Oh, yes, sorry.
So what I see is there is a lot of internal contradiction to what if you the Buddha versus Jesus, I think.
Okay, sorry. I'll increase that as well.
Yeah. So there is a lot of internal contradictions when you compare it from the meaning, origin, meaning, morality, and destiny. This actually, doesn't make logically consistent, not logically consistent, in the sense there is no creator. At the same time, you have you have a moral law which is defined by the society, and ultimately, what is your purpose on this earth? So these are real questions that a man faces, and especially the example that you gave about Priya, because all of these, all that we heard, on the row 2 to 8, is basically ideas. It's just just an idea. But how does idea come back, come in reality with a person? Because a person is real. Okay, when a person is real, he has real problems, and he has real sufferings, and he has real questions. He has real, all of these things are real. And how do you face, the reality of life with all of those concepts? And I feel that it completely contradicts and doesn't give you an answer. It looks like just somebody made up something to just find an answer to the questions of his own life. Like the Gautama Buddha must have done the same thing. Yeah, that's what I found about this religion. And what we see in Christianity is so different, so unique, and of course, yeah, thanks for sharing all of those information. Really helpful.
Do you still need the screen? Sorry.
Yeah, or can you just go to the comparison?
Yes.
Yeah.
This one?
Yes, and okay, yeah, I'm just going through all these things, and what I liked is what you mentioned. Buddha says, "Do the right things, think right." The Four Noble Truths, Eightfold Path, where it says, "Do the right things, have right intentions, have right desires." But the question is, how do you get those right? And Apostle Paul addresses the same issue, that I want to do the right things, but unfortunately I cannot do it. I'm land up doing the wrong things. So I am able to do the right things only because the Holy Spirit who lives in me and who transforms me and enables me to do the right thing. So that's the charm of our gospel message. And yeah, Cheryl, you explained it very in a very right manner. And thank you so much for your effort. Really appreciate. I know it's a very huge topic, but you just compressed it all together in one, in a 1 hour's time. So thank you again for all your effort. I just want to ask anybody who has any questions to ask or want to share something. You can take off the screen.
Thank you for this opportunity, Shiboko. I really appreciate it. And thank you everyone for listening as well.
Yeah, thank you, both of you. I think this is like I've never really I've heard, I know there was a religion, Buddhism, but I've never really even thought of all of these details that was mentioned today. So this is helpful, especially if this is the first time we're hearing this. Thank you for all the details. For a little time I could not hear, but that was my fault. I'll listen to the recording and get caught up. Thanks, Cheryl and Shivu.
Cheryl, do you know what is the size of of this religion, in the sense the number of people and how many countries it is spread?
I know it's most likely in the millions. I'm only saying that it could be more because it's mainly focused in Asian, especially Eastern Asian countries, and we know the populations are very large in these countries. That's why I'm saying it's more in the millions. It could be more, could be a little less.
And even in Canada also, we have a lot of Buddhists, right? I think in our class
Yes.
we discussed that a lot of people who believe in Buddhism. So a large number of people yeah, are in this darkness. That's
Yes.
that. Yeah. All right, Cheryl, thank you so much. Yeah, thank you once again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl. It was really nice, the presentation and all your notes and how you explained everything. Really nice. I just want to check with you regarding that book of Ravi Zachariah. Is it just about Buddhism or what's that book about?
So, what Ravi Zacharias did was actually very creative. So, Priya is one of the central characters, and we see the suffering that she goes through in her life. And
Mm-hmm.
she comes towards the end of it, and she meets both Buddha and Jesus. So
Okay.
Buddha and Jesus are basically having a debate on the very topics of suffering, stuff that Priya is going through and addressing those very things. So
Mm-hmm.
it's focusing more on Buddhism, but Ravi Zacharias did an amazing job of um, focusing on the Christian aspects and the points that Jesus makes. But the interesting thing about this book is at the end, when it's time for Priya to decide,
Mm-hmm.
we don't get to see her choice.
Okay.
Reason for that is because we're supposed to place ourselves, the reader is supposed to place themselves in
Mm-hmm.
Priya's shoes and make the decision themselves.
Okay. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's a very short book. You can finish it off in one reading and very interesting. Yeah.
Okay.
And he's done that in another with in Hinduism as well. Uh,
Oh,
with Krishna, the conversation between Jesus and Krishna. Again, very interesting. Yeah.
oh. Thanks for the suggestions. I'll get those.
Yeah, I have the PDF versions, so if you need anything, just let me know. I can share that.
Sure.
Okay.
Will do. Thank you.
I just had one question. Is Chinese considered the more the like? Can we say China is the only nation that has Buddhism as a major religion, or as any other nations also Buddhistic as much?
I would say nations like Tibet, Taiwan, a lot of these, China's a little bit different because their political sense is also very tied into their belief systems. If you're looking at Buddhism alone, there are lots of other East Asian places that is mainly Buddhist.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
All right. Thank you so much. And next week we'll study about mysticism and mysticism or cults. So Jeffrey will take the class, and I believe it will be really interesting. So please do join, and thank you so much for your participation. It really helps the speaker a lot when we ask questions and we comment. So thank you so much for your participation. God bless.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.